officially live on Facebook, season 5 of the B2B Community Builder Show. I'm your host and Chief Executive Connector, Pablo Gonzalez. And with me today, we've got a friend of mine that it is long overdue to have him on this show. I heard him, actually, I met him at a Association for Talent Development Networker.
Wow,
that a common friend of us who is now actually recently departed invited me to, Brad Rainey, who is a good dude, man. And from the moment I met him, I knew that he was a skilled networker, B, a value added driven business owner. And then I quickly figured out that he is a bit of a wizard when it comes to video production, video strategy, and talking about it. Because then I saw him at this business boot camp talking about a word, propinquity, when it comes to video that we're going to get into next. My good friend, are you the CEO of Siski Productions, or
no? I'm a co-founder. My wife is the CEO. Let's make sure we get that right on camera.
There you go. The CEO's husband and co-founder of Siski Productions, Andrew Cardy. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you, Paulo. That was a really nice and kind introduction. And Pablo, I just have to say, I feel like you're one of these people that, like, when we met, it felt like we had known each other so many years. And even now I'm like, you say, we met this many years ago. I was like, no, that was just that one thing. But we've, you just have that energy, that persona, that characteristic about you that I don't know. It feels like I've known you for forever. So I'm glad to finally be on your show.
That's probably my favorite compliment, man. Right. And I feel that way about you too, man. So, but speaking of people that we've known forever, we got community members that are back in the house, checking in the chat. We got Aaron Lubin, one of the funniest people I've ever met from Boston that I met in Dallas recently. We got my boy, Jesse Rittenhouse from Miami. Welcome, Jesse. I think this might be the first time of you attending a live show, man. Pumped to have you on board. He's a green building expert extraordinaire and a great marketer. Dawn Bates is back. Dawn, I love having you part of this community. She's still in Panama. I'm not jealous at all. Love Panama. We got Roanne, our community manager, who is helping you out in the chat. If you need anything, you let her know. Aaron's requesting We Are the Champions from Boss. We got Trina. She is an energetics coach and the host of the Field Guide to Awesome podcast. Awesome. And then one of my other man crushes, Jordy Gershbein, the coolest man most stylish man on LinkedIn, who says he's familiar with Propinquity. He's currently writing about it. He's out of Chicago, dominates the second city improv scene. And let's kick it off, my friend Andrew. We kind of tease this. We kind of tease this idea of propinquity, but I also want to reframe something real quick.
Yeah.
As we promoted this episode, right? Like I think as marketers and as people that love our craft, we go way down this idea of like these fancy words of the things that we're actually really doing, which is organizational storytelling. And it makes perfect sense to us. But the best performing post I put about this conversation is, if you're going to hire a video guy, you got to show up. Right. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about video strategies and how that relates to organizational storytelling. So Andrew, why don't you tell me why video is so important?
Well, I think this is something that is not the golden epiphany here, but video is so prevalent now. And even 15 years ago, it was a much harder thing to create good quality video and also see good quality video and interact with it. But now the way that our social media is, the way that our companies, even our communication on a daily basis is, stories, visual interaction is really how people prefer to communicate. And I think that's why it needs to be such a key part of your strategy, key part of your daily communications with people, because I mean, it kind of already is. And so why not use that to your advantage? Why not use that to the growth of your goals and your team?
What's this SAT word propinquity all about? Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. So propinquity, it's one of those fun words, so.
And listen, man, I've used it a ton.
I know.
I love using big words to impress people. Go ahead.
I know. Well, so I was definitely one of those kids that like, I would get so excited for the spelling bee. So, I mean, you find a good word and you run with it. But propinquity basically is that connection that you have, that familiarization that your brain ties to something that you see often, right? So think about, maybe somebody here knows him, but like LeBron James, like you can watch all this stuff about LeBron James and you're like, oh man, like I think we'd be really good friends. I really like LeBron James. And it's because you're seeing him visually, you're seeing him do these things that you feel connect and relate to you. And so there's this built-in sense of camaraderie, this built-in connection. Your brain fills in these pieces here. And that's what propinquity basically is. So you have a favorite news anchor, or, vice versa. You see somebody on the news or you hear somebody talking and you're like, oh gosh, like I can't stand that person. I would never like that person, whatever it might be. But it's a really neat concept, because what it allows you to do from a business, a brand, from even just building relationships with your family and your friends or people you want to be friends with, the more that you can have that front facing, that interaction, those points, that allows them to feel more trust and build that trustworthiness, that authenticity with them. So propinquity is a fun way of saying that sense of getting to know somebody,
Yeah, definitely. Don puts here in the chat, propinquity, the state of being close to someone or something, proximity or close kinship. Right. And it's what you said. It's that feeling of, I feel like I know this person.
Yeah.
And how that plays in your head based on how much you've been exposed to that person. Right. Yeah. And video is this way of establishing this sense of closeness with people, right? Like this idea that I feel like Jack Black and I might be best friends if I get to know him, but he has no idea who I am. And if I see him somewhere, right? Like that feeling that I feel to celebrities online that I've seen on TV growing up is now the kind of feeling that you can establish with people based on the ability to distribute videos of yourself and them consume it on LinkedIn or YouTube or even podcasts, right? Podcasting is a big propinquity builder, because I feel like that feeling of having somebody in your earphones, the way that you listen to like your tapes or your CDs growing up, right? Like my affinity for Trent Reznor is because he was in my headset all the time, right?
Yeah. And it is a really fascinating thing, because when you can build those relationships and that familiarity, it really allows you to kind of move past some of the cut through some of those prejudices, cut through some of the innate skepticism that exists when you're present, when you're building this relationship in a way that feels honest, that feels authentic. Suddenly I can say 1,000 times well, maybe not 1,000 times, but there's a little more grace given to somebody when you're like, okay, Jack Black, okay, hey, you just had a bad day, Jack Black. Like tomorrow, you're still my best buddy. And I think that's where, in particular, when you look at like Instagram and you look at even like TikTok and you see celebrities that are doing well on there, it's really where that really is cutting through and allowing them to build that with this fan base. And then now they're translating that into their other ventures or whatever else it might be,
There you go. So that is the case for video, right? Which we're both buyers in. I know that our community that's here in the chat buys into it. I want to welcome back Ice Artie. Welcome back to the show, man. I want to welcome back Jen Filzen, two stalwarts here in the B2B community builder community so far. And all right, so now let's talk. That's video. I feel like anybody can just throw up a video camera, go live on Facebook. You can publish on Instagram, whatever. What is the difference between just video for social media and organizational storytelling, Andrew?
Yeah, and that's a really fantastic question, Pablo. And I think that's one where it's a little bit about the mission and the vision you have for the content you're creating. And I think video on social media really has this sense of a pretty short shelf life, right? I mean, this video, by next week, there's going to be a new episode. And so it'll be replaced. Maybe this has life after that. People can find it again. Hopefully something we say may spark something, but it has a pretty short shelf life. When you think about organizational storytelling, it's really about coming to an organization and building a process, a system of saying, here are the stories that we find in this company. Here's how we find them. Here's how we tell them. Here's why we tell them, the way we tell them. And that will almost always result in social media video that will result in text in your brochures and in your onboarding conversations, but it also results in conversations around the water cooler. It results in hiring decisions. It results in how do I know who to promote? How do I know how to engage the next level of our company? Organizational storytelling is kind of this liquid, if you will, that will fill each part of an organization to fill the need that it has in that part of that organization. Because stories are everywhere, and we don't need to limit a story just to a video. A lot of times that's one of the best ways to release a story, but that story is built, created, curated, owned before it ever gets to video. And I think that's where you see, I mean, so an example being you have companies that producing a lot of content, but none of that content sticks. They're shooting it. There's people that are incredibly good at shooting a lot of stuff that goes nowhere. It does nothing. And it doesn't grow, not an audience, not a company. And then there's other people that release very few amount of content, but those stories are so clear, so compelling, so inviting that you're drawn to it. And anytime that piece of content comes out, it has this ripple effect into the next one. So I think, to me, when I look at the value of storytelling, and then in the context of organizational storytelling, it's really about where is that culture? What is that mission and vision of the company? And how do we then take the stories you have and create and release them to the mediums where they're received, video, web, wherever it might be,
I love that, man. I love how you broke that down. As you were saying that, I had kind of like an aha moment. I had this aha moment of, it's kind of the difference between having a business idea and then just going out and knocking on doors and selling stuff, or writing a business plan, creating your marketing strategy, going to market in a certain way with like uniform messaging, right? To me, the idea of storytelling, when you are thinking about what your content is going to be and what your, how you distribute it, and architecting all that, is kind of like the business plan of your communications is your story that you're trying to tell, is kind of what landed on me.
Very much so. And I think they go hand in hand, Pablo, because I think when you have a clear idea of the types of stories that you have and the types of stories that you are telling, it kind of tells you what you can build and what you can go for. Like we're a pretty small team. We are very intentional in that way. We don't really want to become a very large company, but if I'm setting goals or pretending to tell stories that are pitching myself as that, there's going to be a disconnect between the customers that work with me and the people that we get to when they come and they go, oh, wait, you don't have 1,000 employees? So the stories have to be honest. You have to build with what you have. But if you know what you have, what you can build, it is that cyclical kind of nature to it.
And you bring up another great point. That's when someone is thinking, why would I spend time thinking about how I'm going to tell a story if I can just go out and tell it? You're bringing up this idea that when you execute this correctly, it makes you punch above your weight class, right?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And I think that's where we've always seen it. I mean, I've been in this space since 2004, 2005, maybe. Different hats over the years, but in this space. And as you see, just the rapid saturation of these practices, right? Facebook Live or live streaming. And certainly COVID has kind of brought that to another space, but it is going to ebb and flow. But there's always going to be a large amount of people that do it, that do these things, that this is how I do it. Let me just do it. But the people that are really at the top, that are succeeding and kind of the cream of the crop, if you will, are ones that say, all of these mediums can change, the technology may change, but there's going to be some core things in there. And that's executing the foundational storytelling, the foundational ability to articulate who we are, what we do, how we solve your problems. And those are the ones that, no matter what it is, they're going to last through however saturated a market can be. And I think that's an exciting thing to be in, when you start looking at that and start seeing, if I can start mastering these things, if I can start practicing them, even in this context, if I can practice storytelling in this space and in the time that I'm at right now, then wherever my company grows, whatever divisions come or leave, there's always going to be an ability to respond, use their tools in the right way to get where I want to go.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And as we are clearly talking about the concept of storytelling, that is how you craft this whole thing. I think the execution of storytelling, the blocking and tackling, as it were, is where you put your video that says this, and where you put your
Exactly.
messaging that says that, and where you put your picture that says this, in what mediums. But before we get there, and I want to get there,
Yeah.
it's also highlighting what I'm trying to highlight on this. It's the difference between hiring a videographer and hiring a business strategist that knows how to use video to execute strategy, right? Like
Yes.
this is why you're here. So I'd love to just kind of go back in time a little bit
Yeah.
to when you became that guy. Like what was the first time that you felt truly that you went from like, man, I just shot a great piece of content for someone, then to, man, I just implemented a legit strategy here, and now I'm now an advisor, not just a content creator.
Yeah, and I would say like I feel like I'm constantly evolving in that space. I think it was we were in year 8 of Siski Productions, and I think it was year maybe 2 or year 3. We did a project for a client of ours. It was a training video, and we were creating it was a training video for their employees that were spread out across the United States. All 50 states, they had employees. They were all operating. There was a probably 75% of the the action that they were doing had some personal element to it, and then 25% was this process. But with the problem they were having was that everybody was executing to different levels. Confidence levels were higher and low, and so we needed to create a training video that was across the board. You're going to be rewarded or punished based on this, and this is the line: bring your personality, all these things. And what happened was when we got into that conversation, we went and I said, all right, let's look at the script. There was no script. And I said, all right, well, let's get into talking about what is it that makes a good employee this. And so we probably spent 2 months with various teams, various owners and leaders in this company, gathering different ideas of how would I do this? What makes this a good employee? What makes this a good process? We came down to a script. We filmed that script, but in the course of filming the script, we also said, well, this is good for the employees, but how do we look at it from a consumer perspective? Somebody that's coming and having to trust this person across this table to give me good advice. It was a coaching environment. So how do I go into this environment and instill this confidence and instill this ease that I could trust this person that they're going to execute well? And so we created a couple pieces of content for the customer side they could release to their clients. And then at the same time as this, we were saying, well, we're trying to get more clients for you. Why don't we talk to some of your current clients and help them understand and inform you about what they like about working with you? And so we got 4 or 5 of their clients. And so by the end of this process, I mean, it was probably a longer project than we anticipated. I can't say at the time that we were a profitable project. I don't know, but obviously the lessons learned from it were fantastic, because we were able to go in and say, without extending our production time, in terms of without having to add, 5 or 6 days of shooting, we added a half a day of shooting, and we came away with, I think, 10 pieces of content, when the first conversation we had was really, we just need a training video for this. And so what I've always enjoyed and what I've done since then is really try and say, well, the question behind the question is really like, well, if we want this video to be successful and excellent, well, what are the things that are either needed for this video to be excellent, in a sense of we need to know what makes a good employee or not, or what are the things that are right next to it that'll make this video successful, or be the next domino that this can knock over. So, we have something great for your employees, and we want your employees to love working here and know expectations and have clear idea. But we can also use these testimonials to inspire them, to create recruiting videos for them when they hear about lives changed by working for you. Man, I want to get on that. My personality is going to draw me to that. As a customer, when I'm coming and I've seen you've got some well-known, recognizable faces talking about how easy it is to work with you. You've got products that I can give to my staff to say, you trust them, use this product. There's so many more things that you can have. And so I think that's really where it started, year 2. And since then, there's times where we've worked with companies where really it is, we have a tip of the iceberg that we need to execute. And then from there, we can come back in and say, that was done. Now let's look at these things. But even when we're just coming in to execute like a SWAT team type of thing, even when we're coming in to do that, I always am trying to help our clients and help the people we partner with, our referral partners or strategic partners, help them say like, oh, like there's this ecosystem and this just wide range of content that can exist even in a 15-minute interview. And what can I pull from it? What can I draw from that? My favorite part of the work I do is interviewing people. And I've interviewed hundreds of people in the course of the work that we've done. And I always love being able to say like, well, my favorite question to ask is at the end of an interview, and it says, well, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Probably 9 times out of 10, somebody will say something like, well, I could have saved, 14 and a half minutes of the interview just for this 30 seconds, because you get into this rhythm. And so most of the time when you're filming or you're filming yourself or you're coming in with a script, you're checking these boxes off. And so what we try and do as a strategic partner is come in and say, we will check these boxes and these are content we can pull, but in between these lines, here's another piece. And if I take A and B from here and add it to C, suddenly this speaks to your number one persona. And this one over here, I can pull this 15 seconds and now you've got a Instagram video. And it's all about curating and those stories as best as you can.
No. That was just like a peek behind the curtain of the mind of a storyteller right there, right? Like I want to summarize some of the stuff,
please,
that you just talked about, and what I'm hearing from you. So I'm going to say what I heard from you. Then I'm going to kind of like pose something that I'm going through right now that illustrates that same thing, and then I want to go into the blocking and tackling of how it's actually done. And I want to encourage our community, if you are thinking of a content piece for yourself and you want to run it past Andrew, pop it into the Q&A or let me know that you want to come on screen and ask him a question and you can be part of the show, right? So start thinking about that if you're with us right now. So basically what I heard from you, Andrew, is that most people, when they think of one piece of content that they really, really want, they don't realize how much more it can actually turn into, as long as you think of it strategically.
Yeah.
And thinking of it strategically essentially starts with understanding what the outcomes that you're trying to get out of it and the ancillary outcomes that could come with it. And when you're trying to maximize those outcomes, it starts with the conversation that you're going to have on the front end. So the interview of what you are organizing and the way that the interviewer is going to execute the conversation will allow for that alchemy to happen in the post-production at a maximum level. And something else that I want to say is, as an interviewer, that question of, is there anything else, is generally where the gold is, right? Like you can be in this long conversation. I learned that one from Christopher Lochhead because he's a top rated podcaster. I've started implementing that in just about all my conversations because you really start to get some great gold there. Is that a pretty good summary?
Yeah, that's a great summary. And I should have had you say that and then I could expand.
No, it's great, man. It's great. I was just summarizing what you're saying, man.
Good.
So let's get into a use case, right? Because I'm in this. Yeah. I'm in this moment right now. Yeah. I just had a friend and client of mine, Brett Ruiz. He called me up. He's got a design build kitchen and bath remodeling company out of Medina, Ohio.
Yeah.
And he called me up. He's like, hey, man, I'm thinking about putting together a video that when my guys are walking the job site, when they're already at someone's home, the homeowner can watch the video and know what to expect and know the process. I'm like, Brett, great idea, dude. Like good job for forward thinking of like giving the client a great experience, thinking of that time of when your guys in their home, like to build that propinquity and like really differentiate yourself. But if you think about this a little bit more strategically, the effort you're going to spend in making that video, we can turn into a whole bunch of other stuff. And in my head, this is where I went with it. I'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can break down how we would do that in another scenario. I was like, you know that all of your clients go through a certain journey, right? They go through oh man, there's something happening in my kitchen that, I'm not super happy with. Then they go through it's time to get a new kitchen. Then they go through like, oh God, all right, that means I got to start calling contractors, or is that the first move? Then they go through what is this contractor going to show up and tell me piece? And like, how do I get the best service out of it? Then they go to am I going to like, how do I evaluate all these different proposals? And then they go to, to this idea of like, what's next?
Yeah.
So if you're going to shoot this content piece, why don't we line up, a series of your clients and go through that conversation with them of what they were going through during that time. Mm-hmm. And then we can make a video that is your past clients telling your future clients kind of like what they learned through the process at all these different stages. And on top of that, we can chop it out and use that in the different moments of like, hey, you got to first, when is your space so uncomfortable that you need a remodeling can just be like top of funnel advertising. Mm-hmm. The other stuff can be when they reach out, hey, this is what you should expect. These are best practices, right? Like we can use it in different moments. And on top of that, we can now put video into the entire process of asking for a quote and onboarding, and actually be giving them advice based on what your other clients have experienced, that your clients that you interview, we can also make little hero pieces about how awesome their kitchen is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Like, so I'm doing this at the beginning of March up in Ohio. Can't wait to see Ohio during lake effect weather. But like that was kind of the aha moment I had, that I was like, oh, I need to talk to Andrew about how he executes on this. Yeah. Is that kind of like what you're talking about, what I just illustrated?
Because you really think about all of the different times and ways that somebody would interact with your brand in a moment like that, and so it's I have a problem, and so let me create content that kind of triggers the problem, right? Like triggers hey, I know you have a problem, or these are issues that our other clients have faced. And I do agree with you, Pablo. I think testimonials are one of the absolute best ways to build relationship with your clients, because it's one, you get to see people that you can maybe relate to or connect to. And also you're hearing this hero journey, and you're not having to tell your clients, I'm a hero. Somebody else is telling them for you, but yeah, I mean, and I think the other places are like, how do I build that trust, knowing that this is a trust transaction? Someone's spending money with me. Someone's having to trust somebody come into a house. I'm having to compete against other people that may be cheaper, that maybe, whatever it might be, and all the other variables that are out of my control, So I think it's about, where can I find ways to create content, short, bite-sized pieces that can just build up that confidence in who we are. One of the other areas that you may want to consider too is that, depending on how big his team is, but even doing something like a quick little video of the guys before they even go into the house. And so it can shoot a video like, hey, Joe's on his way to your house. There's a video of Joe, and some of the testimonials, if there's something tied to Joe, and it's like, hey, Joe just did this project. And that way the person who opens the door has more knowledge than the guy who's ringing it, right? They're gonna know what that guy looks like before he gets there. And so they've got that extra little bit of information,
That's a great call. Make a video. So by the way, this is something that we had discussed. I think it was on our onboarding call, but I also ended up talking with Brett about it, of this like idea of like, if you make a video of your team, now you as a CEO don't have to always be the face of the company.
Oh yeah.
In other situations, right? Like they know who's coming to their door because they've developed that propinquity based on having seen that video, right?
Yeah. And I don't have to call Brett, like, Billy, who's at my door, like he has as much expertise, and I have the confidence in his expertise as Brett, and that way, if Brett ever does get involved, it actually adds another layer of this, like, oh man, like I'm either super special because now I've got these other layers, or it's this, okay, I'm talking to this, it's gotten, up the ladder as needed, but yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best ways to go about it, and then if you think about too, the things that are the other areas, the next layer of that would be, well, what are the things that somebody's like, before they make a decision to completely redo their kitchen, are there things that Brett and his team can say, like, all right, hey, maybe you're not ready for a full remodel, but here's some things you can do to improve the quality of your kitchen, or here's some at-home things. Anybody can YouTube, but the problem is there's so many things on YouTube that you got to wade through, like, how do I pick a good sink, or how do I, from a design perspective, how do I even match these things? And I'm probably paying somebody I want an expert to come in to make it look as pretty as it does on all Pinterest. But if there's content that they can create that's sharing some of that design expertise, or some of the DIY little things that can prepare those clients and prep them, suddenly you're reaching to your customer journey before they've even started. You're kind of planting the seeds that eventually they're going to be somebody. And if they're not, you still are somebody that they feel connected and they want to refer to you, even if they're never going to be purchasing a, $20,000 kitchen or something like that, Yeah,
man. So what I'm hearing is basically we've gone from making a video that just keeps a client occupied while you're walking their space and gives them some instructions, to making videos that will educate the market on how to do this on their own, which builds credibility, right? Like, before even needing you. We've made videos that add credibility to your teammates when they show up to the door, and makes that client much more likely to trust that person that they're dealing with, as opposed to just the head of the company.
Yeah.
We're talking about taking a short video and then also enabling, sales development all the way around it, and enabling referrals if we're also giving it to the client to just share about how awesome their kitchen is. And that's the, that storytelling framework of finding, many pieces of gold out of one nugget, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things where it's most of the time with video, the biggest challenge that people have, and myself included in this, like, is the mental blocks that we put in the way of this, right? Shooting a video with my phone is not hard, but you can overthink it. You can stutter your way through too many options. And I think that's the way most people approach video. A lot of companies, clients, I know I want video, but I either way overthink it, or I settle for something. I got a steak dinner in front of me, and I'm eating the broccoli, and that's it. And because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. So I think that's where, for us, we really enjoy those strategic conversations, because sometimes it runs in a completely different direction than when we start, but we want to be part of that, sparking that idea and that ownership of the team to own those stories without having that mental weight of, oh gosh, like what we just talked about could be 50 videos. And for some people, it's like, 50 videos, how the heck am I ever going to do that? I haven't even done one. A lot of that, like, you're probably only talking, 10 or 12 videos that then convert into those 50, but still, you have to be willing to think a little more spatially than necessarily just ABC, if you will.
Yeah. Jesse, I'd love to hear from you, man. I know that you're doing some of this stuff over at Spinnaker Group of shooting videos with your clients and how you've thought through it. So I'd love it if you wanted to come on, or if you have a specific question in the Q&A, I would love to answer it. In the meantime, there's an interesting conversation going on in the chat between JD and Don. And JD is essentially stating, well, first, let me preface this. We've talked a lot about the strategy piece, right? Like hiring a videographer that is a strategist is clear to me, right? Like that is what we've been talking about. But then there's also the decision based around your equipment and the quality and the visual quality of the content that it creates. And JD is a believer. He's saying he believes that the honeymoon is over when it comes to distributing video that is raw and subpar. We should all be sticklers for quality. If we're going out there as content creators, we should be conscientious media producers and give our community a solid viewing experience. Do you agree? And Dawn is, she's kind of clapping back saying, listen, that might work for you, JD, who lives up in Chicago and you got your network up there, but she's a traveler, and she is, she's in different places, and she's a book writer, right? So like, where are you as far as the ROI on investing in the quality equipment and how it all looks? Like, where does that fit in the order of priorities?
Yeah, this is one of those philosophical debates that has existed since the dawn of the record button, I think. So I'm not going to cop out and say I agree with both, but let me just say why I agree and disagree with both, right? So
Perfect.
JD, I definitely agree with, because there is such a saturated market that if you're coming into this space now and wanting to be a content creator, I really think you really have to hustle to build a certain level of community. But if you're coming in just creating content, you really would have to stand above what's out there right now, at least be comparable to the top performers, right? And so I think in that sense, the gear and how you present yourself really does make a difference. If I'm just going to, if I'm going to try and replicate even what you're doing, Pablo, and one of the reasons I'm so excited about being part of the course is that I want to learn how to do it. But if I'm coming in and I'm, my sound's off, my video, I'm sitting in front of a big window with a bright, like, people have seen better things. And so they're not going to give you the patience for you to learn how to be better right now. Like that I think you're right, JD. I think that the time is over for that. Even in film, like feature films and TV shows, we're being a little bit more picky in what we're seeing and what we're tolerating. Now, granted, though, you have this is where I'm going to go with Donna, is that there are platforms where lesser quality production actually is what you need. I mean, TikTok videos, if they're highly produced, it's suspicious. You're like, oh, what? The raw they are, the obese British lady with the camera at her chin talking and doing the live commentary on stuff, it still is going to go well, and that's what it is, but she's also not trying to build a huge community of content creators or get a certain message out, and I think so I think that's where, for me, the tension is always in who am I speaking to, and what are the things that they want to hear, and what are they looking to see and experience. And so for me personally, I want to generally have the idea that I'm not coming wearing a tuxedo to a dinner party when everyone else is in shorts and a t-shirt, but I also want to be a little better dressed than everybody. I want to look a little better, because this is what I'm trying to teach. This is what I'm trying to be, who I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish. So I think it's really about knowing who that audience is and knowing where you can elevate it while still being honest and connected to them. Right. Case in point, I mean, the last point on that is for what you were saying, Dawn, of being a traveler and being maybe creating content about the different places. I mean, there's so many different genres of travel content that it depends on what you're trying to do and what audience, what community you're trying to build. Well, the contents you want, are you trying to compete with the GoPro, Daredevil guys that are jumping off cliffs with a GoPro, or you're like, oh, this is a music video from a DJ in Europe, and this is their, this is what this is. Or is it like I'm educating on culture? Again, it really is, who am I telling this story to, and what are they going to listen? What are they going to respect about what they see?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good context. So just FYI, Dawn is a writer on like really heavy issues, but she is nomadic in her lifestyle, right?
Okay,
like
great.
It's not,
okay, great.
But so I like how you contextualize it to dress code, right? Because I know that if I show up to a tuxedo just about anywhere in Jacksonville, I'm going to be a laughing stock, right? But I also am the guy that's usually in a blazer when other people are not, right? Yeah. So my philosophy overall on dress code, and I think with content it applies as well, is that I always rather be slightly overdressed than slightly underdressed.
Yeah.
And the slightly underdressed guy, and even the guy in flip-flops and a t-shirt at a tuxedo party, if you're the smartest guy in the room or smartest woman in the room, you're still going to be able to hold court, right? It's just going to take you it's going to be a little bit harder to do so. And if you show up looking really sharply dressed, it's going to be a little bit easier to get, to get that buy-in and get your point across. And I never thought about that with content, but it makes a lot of sense because I've made a lot of shitty looking content, right? Like, and to JD's point, maybe the time is up for that, right? Like I've been experimenting with content now for a long time and it served me well, but I have noticed, and by the way, I'm a big believer in, if you're going to go with hierarchy, you go with story and then quality of of production, right? Because that at the end of the day is, I'd rather be the smartest guy in the room than the best dressed guy in the room. Because again, it's strategy versus tactics. But what I have definitely found that is undeniable is that the pieces that I produce, that are produced by a cameragrapher with really good lighting and whatever and good graphics and whatnot, outperform pieces that are of equal variety. That's just me talking to Zoom or me talking to my phone.
Yeah, and I think, so here's a quick story to kind of demonstrate the value of both sides of this coin, right? So one of our realtors here in Jacksonville, one of the top performing teams, they've been a client of ours for now, 8-9 years, right? And he still spends probably, 75% of the content that they put out is him with his phone. And when we first started working with him, the phones weren't as good as they are now. And he was shooting with an iPad in his office and it looked awful. But we produced a couple kind of first entry point contact kind of videos, really nice. They were produced. We used a teleprompter, which we then realized probably wasn't right for him. But, we worked around it. We learned our things. And those pieces did so well for him, partially because they looked really good. They're better than any, most realtors aren't going to invest like that in themselves. Yeah. But then also the next video they got was a personalized message from him where the quality wasn't that great, but it made it feel so much more intimate. This is somebody that's speaking directly to me. There's this level of connection where if we had produced all of those videos in that same kind of tone, that same look, the same feel, it may have lost some of that. And so you have to be real careful with that. Obviously, that's a tension line that you walk. But when you think about the type of content that you create for your company, it doesn't all need to be a certain look, I don't even think it has to be a certain standard. You have to have standards, but it doesn't have to stay a certain standard the entire time. And what we found for him was that he actually had, he'd get really great open rates on that first email, that nicely produced video. And then whatever that action step that he had in that direct, intimate one-on-one video, he had a huge click-through rate on whatever that was, sign up for my newsletter, whatever it was. It wasn't always like finish this watch. It wasn't always the open rates, but the action people responded to, because here he was, I'm looking right at you, I'm talking to you. So I don't know. I think it's really important when you consider that, when we're talking about the dynamics of it, like it's important that you consider what that looks like and how your audience is responding to it and receiving it. But I also think you don't have to I don't think you have to back yourself into a corner to always have to have the top tier gear. I also think you don't want to ignore it completely, thinking that your story is going to be powerful enough to cut through all of the other obstacles you're putting in your listeners' way by having poor audio and visuals,
Got it. And just to kind of put a button on that point, I'd like to move through this really, really quickly and then get more into strategy, right? But I think as far as equipment goes, for somebody nomadic like Don, you're a high quality iPhone, one of these little things one of these like stands that can also be a selfie stick, and a couple of Lav Max mics that you plug into your iPhone with a ring light, and you're golden. It's really kind of like the size of your toothbrush, and a couple bars of soap, and you're going to be able to like greatly elevate that, right?
Oh yeah, no need for more than that.
Cool, man. Cool. So I wanted to touch into, I want to get into Jesse's question, but I want to digest it while I ask you another question. We talked about something that I find fascinating, that is this idea that video allows you to scale yourself, right? Like we were just talking about it before the call, whether it is to recruit talent or to recruit employees, being able to storytell via the video medium allows you to kind of be in every room without having to leave your office. You want to kind of tell me a little bit about that and how it's actually affecting you right now?
Yeah. And I think that's I do think that's one of the most amazing things about video right now is because it's excuse me because it's becoming so widely adopted and an acceptable means of communication. What that's allowing you to do is to use it to start the conversations and start these moments of conversation, right? I mean, I think about, one of the best places, the blog is one of the best blogs on there for using video in your sales process is a company Vidyard. If you haven't done a deep dive in their stuff, it's well worth it. Gold right there. The platform itself is great too, but one of the things that I think is important and a value add of using video is you can record a simple video of, what are those process of a sales? What's that process of onboarding? What's that? It's probably something you're saying repeatedly. And if it's something you're saying repeatedly, it's great. It's a great feed for some video. And if there's exit points that you can then take it off screen and make it a phone call or, where you need to find those exit and entry points to it. But when you look at that as a bar or as a branch or as a journey, there's a lot of those spaces where it's like, man, am I saying the same thing all the time in a sales call? And it's the top of the funnel stuff. Well, that may be a way that I can use a video and at least target some of the things and then be able to look and see who responded and then find a couple of those, I can actually focus on the whales and not have to, cast a net and try and get whales and fish and, all the different types. That's kind of what I think is one of the valuable resources of being able to create video and use it along the way. And I guess to real quick, to what you were saying, Pablo, is I was sharing with Pablo, we're at a next kind of growth stage or a place where we're looking to scale. And so, we have some systems in place, but I still am finding myself where I am taking my time to touch and teach and having to oversee some things where it's like, man, I could create videos for that. I could have somebody else, I could hire somebody in that role and they could create content, internal content that then helps us to scale and take care of some of these things. And so I think as an organization, you always want to be looking at that and seeing how can I be more efficient with my time and is there a way for me to take this and turn this into a good quality piece of content that I could use internally, externally, maybe even too,
Yeah. I think video as an efficiency play is an underrated tactic, man. It's like the mixture between frequently asked questions and propinquity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's frequently asked questions plus networking in every room.
Yeah.
I think it's huge. All right. So Jesse's question.
Yeah.
Jesse asks, how do you make sure that video content connects with the audience you want when they are too busy to get their attention? Do you break it into smaller pieces or try to make it part of your next meeting with them? And I'll give you context on Jesse. Jesse is the, head of growth for a, top-notch green building consulting firm down in Miami called Spinnaker Group. He's building out a marketing plan and a go-to-market strategy for them. And I know that he's been doing some of these like content interviews with clients and other projects that they're doing. So again, I'll ask it, how do you make sure that video content connects with the audience you want when they are too busy to get their attention? Do you break it into smaller pieces or try to make it part of your next meeting with them?
Yeah. And so I guess maybe Jesse, you could answer that. So what type of content or is it that you're creating right now for them that they're too busy to pay attention to, or that's content that you'd put into a maybe show in a meeting? What would that type of be?
Well, as far as I know right now, he's doing case studies with his clientele of these like projects that have come out of the ground in Miami that are making these amazing impacts because of their high level of like green building certification and the tactics that they're employing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think my gut response on that would be, I would maybe simplify it. I'd maybe make it a little bit more, think more along the lines like trailer to a movie type of thing, and like a teaser trailer, not the way that some trailers are where they show everything and they just I see the whole movie and all the jokes and now I need to see it. Why would I watch the movie? But you think about a trailer that's like that peaks. You want to think about the content. If they're too busy to watch it, the two things that I would focus my content on would be inspire curiosity and demonstrate competence. And so if you're in a space and you're reaching out to people that are familiar with your work, or maybe know the buildings or know the projects, but maybe don't know that you're part of it. Maybe it's somewhat of a highlight reel or some piece of content that's kind of, hey, we did these 4 projects and man, we'd love to talk to you about yours. That's way too simple right there. But I want to show that I'm competent and worth your time to have a conversation. Or the second part might be, that curiosity and what is the content that I'm creating that's sparking a sense of curiosity in the client, not necessarily a sales pitch, but what's that curiosity? Why would I want green in my buildings? What difference is that making to my bottom line or to my employees or my staff? I think to answer the second part of that question, even for me, I kind of go back and forth on the value of playing videos in a meeting. It's hard to ask somebody to watch a video before they come to a meeting, but I think in that meeting itself, I think I would want to keep it pretty short. I wouldn't necessarily want to show like more than one video. I'd probably want to keep it to, 2-3 minutes. Because the problem is that you yourself, sitting and watching a video, especially if you're in person, right? This is in person, watching a video. There's this inevitability of like, I'm watching to see their reaction, which can help me know where to go from there. But also, I don't want that to go too long where they're aware that I'm watching them react. So I think there's a tension there, and it's probably something you kind of have to figure out as you go into it and see. We've had clients that a large part of they're pitching large projects, MD Anderson type size projects. And so they use a video as a, cover a lot of ground, present information, and then they're jumping into their presentation. And those videos are 2 to 3 minutes at tops. So that's what I recommend on that based on the context that you shared, Pablo.
Dude, that's really insightful, man. Cause it's true. It is. And by the way, Royan, let's make this a piece of micro content for Andrew. Cause I think it just shows your expertise. We don't think about like how awkward it is to like, hey, watch this video next to me. Right. Like even when I'm sharing like a funny Instagram with my wife, it's just like, I'm sitting here waiting for her to consume it, waiting to then talk to her about it. But it's an awkward minute and a half. Right. So like, you got to think about that stuff. Jesse, if I was given a shot to answer your question here, man, I would think about it in a couple of different ways that I would add to what Andrew said. One is, are you making content that they want to consume? Right. I think that's a really fundamental question. And if the stuff that you're making right now is stuff that they don't want to consume, then you got to prove to them that you can make content that they do want to consume before they will trust you with, hey, watch this. Right. So I've struggled with this with my show, right? Like I've thought very deliberately about like, what does my dream client want to learn about? That's why Andrew is here, right? Jesse, you are my dream client. We have talked many times about business development and how to adapt video. And look, you showed up to this thing because I know that this is a question that you have. So if I'm a developer in Miami thinking about going green and who I want to use in my green certification and as an advisor, I'm probably looking for content around how does green building, what kind of green building tips actually affect my performa.
Yeah.
Right. Like that would be content that I would make, and I would wrap that around whatever you're actually trying to tell them. Right. So like if you make a video that is, the 3 things that actually make your building more valuable beyond the LEED certification that is inside of a LEED certification. And oh, by the way, we do all that crap. Then they're gonna want to see that content and they're going to see it. And as I think about the wrapping of it, like one is the subject and how valuable it is to them. But the other thing is, what we call the hook story offer kind of framework of how do you hit them with that like piece that is the punchline of the joke first. So, and put a headline on it that tells you that there is a punchline that you want to see. And then the actual video starts so that they're hooked from the beginning.
Yeah. I use a method sometimes on a good number of our interviews where it's like exactly that. It's like, I call it a cold open, but it's really like if you only watch these first 10 seconds, like you're going to get a gist of what the rest of the video is. And I think that's a great point, Pablo, because, especially with the certification and stuff like that, if it's something that if there's value in terms of monetary or time saving or those pains that they have. And I know, I know Jesse, them, right? Like we all know, like, oh, this is the pain that they have. But it's about figuring out like, what is it that they win? What story do they get to tell if you solve this for them? What is the story that they are missing out on if you don't solve it for them? I mean, if everybody else is going green and they're still stuck in this, like they're gonna lose out, you know. Here in Jacksonville, the commercial and building market is just insane. And so, you know, even the clients that we're courting and talking to, it's like a lot of them, they're like, you know, I don't have time. I don't need to talk to you about this because I'm booked through the end of the year. It's like, well, okay, that's great. But, you know, for me, I'm like, well, what was it like 5 years ago for you? And they're like, well, it was slow. It's like, okay, like eventually you're going to have to compete for the places you want to build. You're going to be competing. And how are you going to compete with the people that own that? They got to trust you. They got to know you. They got to love you. And so you got to think down the line as well as right now. And so that's where that's where I would say, and what Paulo was saying too, is I'd lean in that way and say, oh man, like how can I help them tell better stories with what they'll do because they work with us, because they chose to work with us. Your story is going to be 1,000 times better. This is what it sounds like.
Love that. Yeah. Good call, man. Listen, dude, before we wrap up, is there anything else, Andrew? What have I not hit? What have we not hit that you want to talk about, man?
You know, I'm trying to think, Pablo. I mean, I don't know. I love storytelling. I have ever since I was a little kid in the church plays, and never left me. It's always been in my blood. And so any chance I get to talk about helping people own the stories that they're telling and tell better stories, you know, that's time well spent. So thank you so much for letting me be on the show today. And of course, too, if I can talk with anybody outside the show, hit me up.
Yeah, where do they find you, Andrew?
LinkedIn's probably the best way. I mean, you can direct message me, or you can always visit our website and stuff like that too. So yeah,
awesome, man. Well, we're gonna link all that stuff in the show notes. I appreciate you, man. Like it's clear that this is your superpower, right? The way that you talk about this stuff, I thought that you came with some really good, insightful, practical tips from everything from like strategy to like equipment to the context of it all. So I really appreciate you making time for this, man. And I'm super, super pumped that you're going to be in the Relationship Flywheel Bootcamp that starts today. So if you are listening right now and you want to get in on the next round, right, we are teaching this methodology of how we execute on the live internet talk show and repurpose the content in a way to tell your story at scale all the time. First cohort starts today. We're launching another one in April. There's still a chance to get in. That is bethestage.live/bootcamp if you want to get in. Members of our community are in here, folks that showed up to this call. Andrew, Trina's in on this, awesome. and Jen, who was here earlier, is also in on this. I just want to thank you, man. Like you've just been such a great part of my network since I've gotten here, right? Like you're one of the guys that I met early on when I was kind of going the entrepreneurial route. You've invited me to networking events. You've given me advice. You've met me for coffee. You've been a friend. And that doesn't go unnoticed. I really appreciate that out of you, buddy. So I appreciate you kind of, being part of the show and being on board on the boot camp also and future collaborations that we have in store.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Pablo. Really all of those very kind things, and I feel the same way. So I'm excited to learn and grow and continue to build great things together and for our community here.
Love it, man. And last but not least, I want to thank you, Don. I want to thank you, Ice. I want to thank you, Jesse. I want to thank you, Trina. I want to thank you, Jen. I want to thank you, JD. All of you that took an hour every day to just show up and be a part of this conversation. Really, really appreciate it. Next week, we got Nemanja Ziskovic. He's a Serbian friend of mine that I met on LinkedIn, who's grown his LinkedIn to 20,000 followers and has built a business off of it. So we're going to talk about exactly that, how to grow your LinkedIn to 20K, build your business off it. Week after that, we got 5 strategies of high growth firms with Lee Fredrickson, who's done this in-depth research report of strategies that high growth firms have implemented that have grown their business. We got a bunch of other great stuff. So if you're listening on the podcast, it is not too late to join us live on Mondays. Would love to see you here. I want to thank my team. I want to thank everybody that's a part of this. Andrew, you're the man, dude. Send us off. What is one piece of advice that you would give right now if you are thinking about investing in video production for your business?
Oh, I would say do it. Do it. Practice. Get started. Don't wait to be perfect. Just do it.
Love it, man. I'll see you soon.